Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have a recommendation video for if you are excited about the Ahsoka series coming to Disney Plus for Star Wars. I'm going to recommend some books that you should read in anticipation or as a result of watching the show. You could read these before or read these after. To preface this, I'm talking about books that I think will enhance the experience. Sometimes you read a book before the movie or show comes out, and while you're watching it, you know, oh my goodness, it connects to this, and it makes the experience of watching it week to week more fun. However, there's a flip side where sometimes you watch the show and you enjoy it so much and you say, man, I wish I knew this character's backstory. I wish I knew all this. And you can go back and read the books and then you're like, oh my goodness, and it'll make a rewatch that much more enjoyable for you. Well, that's what I intend to do with these recommendations. You can do these either way. Now, Ahsoka comes out very soon, so you may not have time to get to all these, and in fact, I'd be shocked if you did, but these are just some general recommendations that I thought I would provide given my knowledge of the series and given what we believe will happen. Now, in this, I am recommending 5 books and or series for this. 4 of them come from the canon, from what Disney recognizes as their canon, and then 1 set of series comes from the Legends line, which, if you don't know, up until about 2012, the Star Wars storytelling operated under this umbrella of storytelling that was known as the Expanded Universe, that was later renamed Legends. But that's what it was known as, and then starting in about 2014, they started the canon. But so I have 4 canon, 1 Legends to talk about, 5 total recommendations. So why don't we get into it? I'm going to start with my most recommended thing, the thing that I think will enhance your experience the most. And then I'm going to drop down to my number 5, which is more of a, I think this can enhance your experience, but this isn't the one I say, this is the one you have to read instead. So, starting with my number 1, it is actually the classic Legends Heir to the Empire trilogy, featuring the novel Heir to the Empire, which I love this cover, by the way, gorgeous cover. And you have Dark Force Rising. And then the 3rd book is The Last Command. For those of you who don't know, this trilogy came out during a time when there were no Star Wars books really being produced. There was no Star Wars anything being produced. And the publisher, Bantam, the editor at the publisher, Lou Aronica, decided he wanted to do Star Wars books, and so he approached Lucasfilm, and Lucasfilm agreed, and he wanted to do them in hardcover. These are my paperback editions, but he wanted to do them in hardcover, and he wanted to make a big deal out of them. And so they ended up going to one of Bantam's new authors that they had just hired, named Timothy Zahn, to write a big series. And Timothy Zahn wrote the Heir to the Empire trilogy, that for a lot of people is their Star Wars storytelling, and for a lot of people is what they believe the sequels could have been. Now, there are some things in here that won't necessarily matter to the Ahsoka series, but let me lay out what will. First of all, the main villain in this series goes by the name of Thrawn. That is a name that is mentioned multiple times in the trailers, and if you've been following the Rebels series and The Mandalorian, you've heard his name as well and even seen him before. Thrawn was originally introduced in this trilogy, and when you see the title Heir to the Empire, it is literally referring to Thrawn. Now, Thrawn, and that title, Heir to the Empire, was mentioned. Ahsoka says the line in the trailer. And Heir to the Empire really shows how Thrawn's so tactical and smart, and shows how he's able to really do impressive feats against the New Republic. This series takes place about 5 to 6 years after the events of Return of the Jedi, which is about the same time that Ahsoka does. And myself and many other people have long believed that Dave Filoni was taking elements from this trilogy to use for his movie that he's coming out with, and of course the Ahsoka series. Now, it's entirely possible he could go way off from this, but there is an old man dark Force user who's kind of crazy. There's a young woman who is a Force user who is kind of teetering between the light side and the dark. There is main characters like a Jedi and some political characters and some Rebels characters. Those are all, very similar to the premise of Ahsoka. And so because of that, I think that this will really, you will understand why they're making all these references in the show, and you might be able to say, this is how because they're not straight adapting. It's not a straight adaptation, but they're pulling things a little bit. Thrawn's second in command, Pelion, was already in The Mandalorian. So I really think this is the number one thing to read. It's, they're decent sized books. They're 400-ish pages long each, but I think they're well worth it. Especially maybe read these after, but you could also do them before. So that's enough on the Thrawn trilogy. Let's go to another book that I have. This is a standalone novel. This is titled Ahsoka by E.K. Johnston. Obviously, lowest hanging fruit possible with this series. The TV show is called Ahsoka. The book is called Ahsoka. This book takes place almost about a year after Order 66. Ahsoka's on the run. She doesn't know what she's going to do. She's just kind of living. And in this book, she basically has to figure out what does a Jedi do when they're alone, and then she tries to befriend some people on this local planet, and then all of a sudden, Inquisitors come. And Inquisitors won't necessarily be in this new Ahsoka series, but evil Force users will, and this really is a great character study into Ahsoka. You see the depths of sadness and also the joy that she has when she helps other people. You see her purpose and how she goes from being aimless to actually helping start the rebellion. And so I thought that this book, it's a superb book, and it should really create some great context for Ahsoka. And this is a canon novel. Some of the events in this book have been rewritten for the Clone Wars season 7. The author E.K. Johnston wrote this book based off of the ideas that they had written out, but they had never intended to finish season 7 because they had been canceled. And then once they got the opportunity to do so, they wanted to make it even better, so they changed it. So there are some changes in here, but overall, it still works really well as a great character study for Ahsoka. So that's why it's my number 2, and it is part of the canon. My number 3 suggestion is another trilogy, and it's also written by Timothy Zahn. This is the canon Thrawn trilogy, which includes the books Thrawn Alliances, and I apologize about the sticker there that couldn't come off, and then Thrawn Treason. This is the trilogy about what it was like when Thrawn came into the Empire from the unknown regions, from space. Now, the first thing I should mention here, if you've watched Rebels, for sure you should read this trilogy because it intertwines with Rebels throughout. The first book takes place entirely before Rebels, the second book kind of intermingles with Rebels, and the third book happens towards the tail end of Rebels. But this whole trilogy really does a great job of showing not only what Thrawn is like, but showing what the Empire is like, and showing why Thrawn is willing to work with the Empire, and why he's able to change the Empire, perhaps for the better, and why perhaps Thrawn isn't such a bad villain after all. He's very competent in these books. And so I think that these are more likely to have direct impact in terms of the character of Thrawn. However, I think they're unlikely to reference these books much in the TV show. There's a character in here who might get referenced in the TV show, but these will make you really appreciate the villainy of Thrawn. And so that's why I recommend the Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn from the canon. The next book is a standalone book, my number 4 recommendation, and that is a Rebels tie-in book called A New Dawn. This book is impressive for a couple of reasons. One, it was the first ever canon novel released, written by John Jackson Miller, with a foreword by Dave Filoni. So and Dave Filoni actually gave advice on this book. This book came out literally right when Rebels was coming out, I think a couple weeks earlier than Rebels. And this book tells the story of how Kanan and Hera from the Rebels TV show got together working to fight the Empire. You're not seeing big armies fighting each other. You're seeing these people start doing spy-related things to start figuring out information and then finally deciding to form an organization. And, Kanan is in the Rebels TV show, as is Hera. Hera, however, has already appeared in the Ahsoka trailers and in the Ahsoka information, so we know she's going to be very relevant to it. And even though most of this book is not from her perspective, you do see a lot of her character in this book, and you get to see what the rebellion was like in its earlier stages, similar to Ahsoka. And you get to see what the Empire was like Whereas with Thrawn, you see how the Empire could be good, could be competent. Here you see how the Empire can be terrible. And it has a superb villain. One of the best Star Wars villains is in this book named Count Vidian, who is just a terrifying, horrible man. And so this one, it's not quite as necessary as the others on the list, but if you are interested in the character of Hera and if you're interested in the Rebels crew, I think this will be very valuable to you as the Ahsoka series comes out. Now, my final recommendation is my least important, but I think could have quite a lot of impact. And I think I could get a lot of flack from people on this, so I want to be very clear in why I'm recommending this trilogy. I'm going to recommend the canon Aftermath trilogy titled Aftermath, Aftermath Life Debt, and Aftermath Empire's End. Now, I need to start out by saying, yes, a lot of people hate these books. A lot of people hate these books, and I understand why. When the first book was pitched to audiences, it was basically pitched as, we're getting our post-Return of the Jedi, we're going to get this book that ties into The Force Awakens, it's going to provide a ton of context, it's going to do all these things, and it didn't do any of that. Really what it did was it told a story immediately after Return of the Jedi that shows the chaos that the galaxy went into and shows the formation of a small rebel group. This book has been called by many reviewers as Chuck Wendig's Rebels Season 1. This is his take on a rebel group that they did with the Rebels TV show, although not using the same characters, obviously. This trilogy, however, I will argue, particularly books 2 and 3, do a great job of showing the state of the New Republic. Why is the New Republic demilitarizing? Why is the New Republic making these decisions? Why is the New Republic not as involved in the Outer Rim? Why is the Empire considered to be gone and then come back? Why is all this happening, the stuff that's later on happens in The Mandalorian? All of this stuff connects, I believe. And so this trilogy, while not being well responded, and the writing style in this series is unlike any other writing style. It's written in third-person present tense, so it feels more like a movie script and that things are currently happening. And so it's jarring to read this trilogy. I understand that. It's jarring. But I think that if you're willing to read, and there's the interludes can be a lot for people. And I enjoyed them, but a lot of people didn't. What I would recommend, if you start reading the book and you don't enjoy the interludes, you can skip them and perhaps return to them another time. They all become important eventually, but you don't have to read them. You can just read the main story in this. But this trilogy, I do believe, will provide good political context and good military context to what the New Republic's like. A lot of this is showing what the rebellion is like. A lot of the books are what the rebellion's like, what the Jedi are like, or what the Empire's like. This is showing what the New Republic's like, and I think it's valuable in that perspective. So I would recommend this Aftermath trilogy least of the others. If you're going to read anything, read these others. But if you can, read them all. But if you've read all these, let me know. Do you think these are going to be valuable to the Ahsoka series, or do you think, nah, you're totally off base? If you think there's other books that you think will be more valuable as recommended reading, other 5 books, let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. If you're interested in reading these books, but you want a little bit more context, ask below. I'd love to answer questions about them. And please make sure to subscribe to the channel. I have lots of Star Wars book videos. I have lots of Star Trek book videos, fantasy, sci-fi, political thriller. I have all the genres recommended on my channel. So until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.